Hello, everyone. We are Marta and Ina from Keys2Success-Coaching, and welcome back to another episode of Exploring Female Leadership, where we have real conversation with women who are redefining leadership on their own terms. Today, we are honored to spotlight Suezette Yasmin Robotham. Welcome, Suezette.
Thank
Hi,
you for
Suzanne.
having me. I'm so excited.
Suezette is a visionary executive with nearly 20 years of experience driving transformative change at the intersection of passion and purpose. She has shaped human capital strategies in the education reform sector with organizations like Teach for America and the New Teacher Project, and then move into global leadership roles at industry giants including Google, Meta, Gartner, and Salesforce. And now, she's adding yet another milestone to her incredible journey with the launch of her new book, Beyond Titles, Fearlessly Leading as Your Authentic Self, which is coming on October 21st, correct?
Yes, very soon.
Cool. And today we will explore her leadership journey and the lessons she has learned about authenticity, leadership, and living in alignment with your values.
Thank
So,
you. I'm
Ina,
excited.
why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Suzette, for being here. We're really, really excited. To start us off, Suzette, what's one thing that really defines your leadership style?
I would say two words define my leadership style: intentional and decisive. I've always wanted to ensure for myself and for others that not only was I creating space and opportunity to make sure that I have a full picture and understanding of what's happening around me, but then also really clear that when I've made a decision that I'm committed to that decision. Although I also say that I'm a constant learner, right? So I think that at the point in life that we stop learning, it might be, time to wrap it up.
Suzette, authenticity is your book or part of your book title and clearly runs through how you lead today. But I assume this commitment to show up fully isn't just happening overnight, right? I mean, there has to be a journey, and I would be very interested. Can you please tell us a bit about your journey?
Absolutely, Ina. I want to be incredibly clear. In my specific case, I'm really talking about having people feel like they can show up in the workspace and lead fully and wholly as they are as people, right? And so as I think about authenticity, the experience that I'm solving for is the fact that in 2014, Deloitte came out with a study about covering in the workplace. In that study, they found that about 61% of professionals across the board, so regardless of race, gender, et cetera, went into work and purposely and intentionally hid aspects of their identity for fear of feeling othered and out of place and that they didn't belong. And then when you began to cut the data, you saw that a higher percentage of women were covering in the workplace. Then by race and gender, you actually saw that there was a large population, Black, Hispanic, Latino, and Asian respondents that were covering. So I actually had done a TEDx talk in 2014 about that very idea. And so when I think about my own journey with realizing that I was covering, right, as we think about authenticity and realizing that that was not going to serve me along my leadership journey, it actually was, I was fairly young. So I was about 26 years old. And a big girl job. So was incredibly excited to be the leader at this education nonprofit organization. Had a moment where I actually reflected on there were certain leadership styles in our organization that were honored, that were given platforms, where you saw just a leaning toward, even in decision making, if a specific leader spoke up, it was right. Maybe if I spoke up, it was oh, well, maybe not, right? And so just honoring that in that environment, I was starting to feel myself trying to, contort into some other form or version of myself because the way that I led wasn't necessarily feeling like it was valued. And I finally had a moment, I was having a little bit of a spicy conversation with him where I realized if I stayed silent about who I was and my experience and the value I brought to the team, I just couldn't do it. And so, I said to him in that conversation, I was hey, I am the best relationship builder, right? At the time I was owning external relationships with the school districts. Nobody builds better relationships than me. And in that moment, you're oh my God, did I just say that to my boss? It was in that moment and then out about an experience where I was no, because what you're experiencing is a dulling of what you know to be true about your actual gift and ability and what you contribute to not only this organization, but the broader mission of making sure that we were preparing students with high quality access to education. But I think it's that moment when you realize that, hey, we're at this interesting crossroads of, do I now have to completely shift and pivot how I actually think and lead and see myself to fit this dynamic? Or do I figure out how there is this beautiful kind of convergence of that?
Yeah, wow. So that if you talk to people, a lot of people are saying that authenticity and professionalism, like bringing my true authentic self, will keep me from appearing professional. I know you have a strong opinion on that. Can you share with us what you mean with authenticity and professionalism aren't contradictions?
They absolutely aren't contradictions. I think that authenticity in the workplace in particular is a superpower. There are tons of studies that show that authentic leaders have high-performing teams. There was actually a study that showed that organizations that honored authenticity made 147% more per share, just based on organizational performance. And so what I want folks to unpack and understand is that I'm not saying show up and just do whatever. We know that there are norms at organizations. We know that there are policies. We want to create respectful environments. What I am saying, though, is allowing people to lead from their truth and from their perspective and from their insights and from what they actually, the additional value that they might bring. Because you know what, you might be quiet in a meeting, but by the time you speak up, you've leaned in with intention and you're able to be decisive. That's just as valuable as the person that speaks through the whole meeting, right? But when we diminish styles and ways and beings of understanding, I mean, you know, like when you think about people coming to organizations from all kinds of walks of life and different cultures and communities and countries, if we're not creating environments that honor that, you know, in specific cultures, sometimes people are more what you would say is long-winded, but that's because storytelling is just the norm of the way that culture communicates. When I think about authenticity, it's not that I don't think that, you know, if you work in an environment where you have to wear a suit, you show up not in a suit, but I do think in that environment, you should be able to lead from a values place and with your style honored just as much as anybody else's style.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I loved it. And as you said, that foundation of authenticity that you've been talking about really seemed to have shaped the way you approach and change and growth. And we know you've made some bold career transitions from the nonprofit world into tech, and each time staying grounded in your values. Can you tell us what gave you the courage to make that leap?
You know, I've had, I'd say, a really circuitous career journey. And what I realize is if I'm in education or if I'm in corporate, this desire and this just internal commitment to my purpose, which is creating access and opportunity, no matter where I am, right? And when I think about my journey, I spent all those years in education really focused on, like, how do we ensure that students have equitable access to high quality education? And going into corporate, I was like, okay, this is the other side of the conversation, because, you know, we talk about students getting to and through college, but then they're coming out into the market and may or may not have access to job opportunities, right? And so whether it's in the talent development, but no matter what space I'm in, it's how do we, one, expand even people's understanding of what opportunities are at an organization? I hope that when somebody sees someone like me with bright pink nails in tech, they're like, man, I can do that too. Not how is she there, but that's a space for me too, while also creating an opportunity for organizations to expand their minds to, you know, our talent doesn't necessarily look the same or feel the same, but people can come in and have incredible impact and really help us to change the world. And so what has been my guiding light and compass point for all of the decisions of my career, and you don't realize it at the time, but when you look at the common thread, it is this desire and appetite to create access and opportunity for others.
Wow. Thank you, Suezette, for sharing. It's so inspiring to hear how you turn every experience into opportunities. So building a little bit on that, how do those experiences continue to shape the way you live today?
I will say, when I think about the thing that keeps me really anchored, I'm a first generation American. Both of my parents grew up together in the same parish in Jamaica. right? And then my mother is actually the first person on either side of my family to come to America. And so what I grew up seeing in my household was our family ended up being the point of family reunification in the United States of America, right? And so foundationally, when I look at my value set, it is this like nurturing and commitment to bringing our family here and to providing access to, you know, the quote unquote American dream. And so that commitment to access and opportunity, I would say at this point, is not only internalized, but it's a part of my DNA. And so for me, my value set is very much something that's deeply ingrained in me. And when I lose sight, right, because I'm like, oh, like, what's the bottom line? I'm like, but is it aligned with what you actually value? And your value set is like very much foundationally formed in experiences of childhood. And so before anybody told you that it was wrong, like, what did you want to be when you grew up? Right. And then even thinking about how that shows up in adulthood and in life and in the things that interest you. And sometimes you have to unlearn. I don't want to say that you don't have to unlearn some things, but like those things that you deeply hold true to the core of who you are is where I think all of our vision for our journey should actually be anchored and start from.
Wow, Suezette, so you're deeply anchored in value, whether it's relationships, community, bringing people together. In my first question, you described your leadership as intentional and decisive, also to values. Can you explain a bit more?
When I think about intentionality, and this is something I had to learn, because, you know, authenticity doesn't always come perfectly. Sometimes you get passionate in a moment and think that's authenticity, but authenticity without intention is not actual authenticity, right? And so when I think about my intentionality, for instance, you might be in an intense conversation with someone. It's allowing for that person may have some other experiences or additional perspective that I'm not gleaning in this space. Can I create enough space to allow them to tell me more? And so it's allowing for the pause. Well, I know I talk a lot about the pause. It's allowing for the pause. It's allowing for the interrogation of the why. It's allowing for your perspective is not the only perspective informing a space. So that by the time I make a decision, I have enough understanding where I feel clear and I have the clarity, because clarity is power, that in that decision, I feel that it is the right one. One of my favorite books in the world, I highly recommend The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. So in The 4 Agreements, he says, you end all human suffering by leaning into these 4 things. So the first is be impeccable with your word. So like leading with integrity, making sure that you actually can commit to what you said. Don't make assumptions. So again, allowing for that, there are things informing the experience that you're having and that nothing actually is ever about just you. Don't take anything personally, right? And again, if we're going to end human suffering, it's impossible for anything that somebody else is doing to be always 100% about you. And then the very last thing is always do your best. So if you come into a situation and you can say, in that moment, in that situation, I did my best, then that's all that matters, right?
So that we talked about like different environments require different clothing, like suits, and especially in environments where there's a lot of different people, there's also sometimes the pressure to conform. Now, you being a leader, did you ever feel pressure to tone down your style? Have you ever experienced something like that?
Very early in my career. And one of my first mentors helped me navigate that. When I was working in Atlanta Public Schools, right, I'm in the office of the chief of staff. And, you know, the school district central office, it's professional attire. And, you know, sometimes at 23, or your professional attire is not the same professional attire as the superintendent. And my leader gave me feedback, not from you must wear suits, but it's always being thoughtful that people are always looking at you. And so what is it that you actually want to represent? And how is it that you want people to understand and know your presence? So I think it's also just a reckoning and a realization that like there are just some environments that are not, it ultimately honestly comes down to alignment. Stylistically, this is not aligned. From a policy perspective, this is not aligned. From what I wear to work, this is not aligned. And so how do I find those environments that allow me to show up? And again, naming, I don't think fashion is authenticity. I think fashion is an expression of authenticity, right? And so getting past the like wardrobe and clothing, if doing that is showing up authentically. No, it's an expression of your authenticity.
I love that. I love that you said even when you adapted to the environment, you still held on to something that made you. And you also mentioned to us, right, that your nails have actually become a bit of a signature and even appear in a documentary about your story. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and what that symbolized for you?
Yes. So I've always been a little bit of a rebel, but also, again, understand the balance of social norms, et cetera. And so when I have worked in more traditional corporate environments, while I would keep my dress, pretty in alignment, although it might be a little bit more colorful, but like, standard kind of suits and slacks and dresses, et cetera, I've always used my nails as my outlet. So the docu-series, See Her Multiplicity, actually starts with me at the nail shop getting nail art. So like I mean, for 20 plus years, my nails is a little bit of my active rebellion of like, yes, I'll wear this black suit, but then I'm going to have, 2-inch long stiletto nails that are beautifully designed because I'm going to keep myself in this environment. And so even if who I am can't maybe express stylistically in that space, it's still going to express through some form or fashion of who I am through my nails.
That's amazing how such small thing can carry such a meaning and also like reflect your image. And I love it. And Suzette, your story is so inspiring that we could be talking to you for hours, I guess. I actually love hearing about it. But unfortunately, we need to come to an end. So the last question that we have for you is what advice would you give to women starting their leadership journeys?
The advice I would give to women starting their leadership journeys is lean into the beautiful thing that is curiosity. I think leading with curiosity allows you to come into environments with an objective lens that just will, when I think about, again, the 4 agreements, that will allow you to suspend judgment, suspend assumption, not take things personally, feel like you can be impeccable and in your integrity, and then actually really do your best. Because curiosity actually for me is then the segue to constant learning, which again, like I said earlier, you want to be learning throughout your life and have space for something new to come in and inform your decision making and your experience.
Suzette, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. We are very honored. And see, your story is so powerful, and it's a good reminder that leadership doesn't have to fit into outdated models, right? And it should be grounded in authenticity. Some of the key lessons I took away are like authenticity and professionalism can reinforce each other and they don't have to compete, right? Authenticity isn't static. It's an ongoing process of alignment, finding yourself, anchoring yourself in your values. And, sometimes the smallest details like nails can serve as a meaningful reminder of your identity and the courage of carrying it forward. You have done such a beautiful job of capturing all of your ideas in your book. We are very, very excited for Beyond Titles to come out. And yeah, for everyone watching us today, I hope Suzette's story encourages you to see the authenticity in yourself and that it's not a risk, but it's one of your greatest assets in leadership. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Suzette. We love having you.
Thank you, Suzette.
Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your incredible journey, ladies. This is amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being part of it.
Awesome. And to everyone out there, bye and see you soon.